3 million lines of encrypted German traffic. One woman decoded them by hand, and the military kept her name classified for 60 years. It's January 1943, Bletchley Park, England. Rain hammers the Victorian mansion. A 23-year-old woman named Joan Clarke sits at a wooden desk. A fresh intercept in front of her, a Kriegsmarine signal, 800 characters of gibberish. She reaches for her pencil. Around her, 200 other women do the same. None of them will be thanked for what happens next. None of them will be named. Here's what most people get wrong about code breaking. They think of Alan Turing alone, a genius in a room. I've read the declassified rosters myself. Turing needed an army, and that army was mostly women. By 1944, roughly 70% of Bletchley's workforce wore dresses, but the official histories, they're nearly silent on that fact. The stakes were absolute. Every day, German U-boats prowled the Atlantic. Every encrypted message they sent could order a torpedo into a merchant vessel carrying food, medicine, ammunition to Britain. Crack the code and you save a convoy. Miss it and 300 sailors drown. These women understood the weight. They showed up 6 days a week. No overtime, no recognition, knowing their work might determine whether Britain starved. Joan Clarke was exceptional, but not alone. She'd studied mathematics at Cambridge, one of the few women allowed to, but her degree didn't count officially. She was hired as a clerk, paid roughly half what her male counterparts made. She cracked the naval Enigma variant anyway. Her supervisor, Gordon Welchley, knew her value. He fought to promote her. The establishment said no. A woman as senior codebreaker? Unthinkable. But Joan wasn't the only architect of victory working in the shadows. Across the Atlantic, in the United States, a parallel story unfolded. While men built the machines, the bombers, the fighters, the tanks, women built the infrastructure those machines needed. And I don't just mean the factories, though yes, that too. The B-17 Flying Fortress. 419,000 of them built during the war. Each one required precision riveting, electrical assembly, systems integration so complex that a single mistake could kill a 10-man crew. And who did much of that work? Women. Rosie the Riveter wasn't propaganda, she was real, and she was indispensable. But here's where the story gets darker. After 1945, the narrative flipped. Those women were told to go home. Their security clearances were revoked. Their contributions were classified, not for national security reasons, I should note, for something more petty, shame. The military establishment couldn't stomach the idea that victory had depended on the labor of women. Joan Clarke lived until 1996. For decades, she couldn't tell anyone what she'd done. Her fiancé broke up with her because she wouldn't explain her work. Her family thought she'd wasted her talents on filing. Only in the 1990, after declassification, did the world learn the truth. And even then, most textbooks buried it in footnotes. Let me be precise about the scale. Bletchley's codebreakers, including those women, shortened the war in Europe by an estimated 2 to 4 years. That's millions of lives. The strategic bombing campaign, which those factory workers made possible, delivered devastating pressure on German industry. Historians argue endlessly about its efficiency, but no one argues that it mattered. The women of Bletchley Park developed techniques still used in modern cryptography. The women in American factories pioneered assembly line innovations that became standard in aerospace manufacturing. Their work didn't end in 1945. It echoed forward, shaping how we build, how we think, how we solve complex problems under pressure. But the real tragedy isn't that we forgot them. It's that we knew, and we chose not to remember. Military brass wrote reports acknowledging women's contributions. Then those reports were filed away. Generals gave speeches praising factory workers. Then budgets for women's war memorials were denied. The erasure was deliberate. What changed? Declassification. Historians who refused to accept the official narrative. Women like Joan Clarke's niece, who fought to set the record straight. Archivists who dug through boxes of dusty records and said, wait, this doesn't match the story we've been told, and they were right. Today, Bletchley Park is a museum. You can walk the halls where Joan Clarke worked. You can see the Enigma machines, the bomb devices, the intercepts pinned to walls. And if you look closely at the plaques, you'll see women's names. Not many, not enough, but they are there, finally. The bombers are gone now. Most of them were scrapped after the war, their aluminum recycled. The factories retooled for civilian production. The women dispersed into lives that history barely recorded. But the work remains. The mathematics they pioneered. The techniques they invented. The blueprint they left for what's possible when you refuse to waste human potential. There's a lesson here that goes beyond history. We don't remember these women because the system wasn't designed to remember them. Victory had to be attributed to generals, to machines, to the abstract notion of the war effort. Acknowledging that women broke codes and built bombers meant acknowledging something uncomfortable, that the structures we'd built to exclude them were arbitrary. So when you read a history of the Second World War, any history, and you see women mentioned only in passing, if at all, remember Joan Clarke at her desk in January 1943. Remember the thousands of women on factory floors, hands steady, eyes focused. Remember that they didn't ask for credit, they asked for recognition, and we owe them the truth. The unseen architects of victory aren't invisible anymore. We just have to look closer. We have to read the declassified files. We have to ask questions about whose names are missing from the official record. And we have to be willing to revise the story we thought we knew. Subscribe for more untold stories from the margins of history, the ones that reshape everything once we finally look.